I think we'd all agree that there are some things in life that just turn out to be inevitable. And some of them are just sort of features of the modern human condition, like death and taxes. But some other things are also inevitable and more impactful, specifically for crypto, like the periodic introduction of increased liquidity to debase currencies. If you're just hoping it's inevitable that you're able to use your bags to buy a giant house that's not falling off a cliff, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. Let's see who we got here. Mission Zambia, good morning. Thank you for joining, as always. Mission Zambia says, just because it's inevitable doesn't mean we have to be passive about it. Who's getting a pickaxe and getting to the dirty work of adoption with me? Yep. Usually I would be saying that Cardano was inevitable, but in this case, it's about the macro environment. Philly Swag says, all my ADA is locked up in DeFi. What are you doing with yours? I am right now mainly just trying not to get lobster trapped, trying to keep a hold of all my ADA and not creating any circumstances under which anybody could take my ADA from me. That's mainly what I'm doing. Joe Davidson, thank you for joining. Joe Davidson says, hashtag build on Cardano. And also, I built that thing you asked me to last night. Okay, tell me about that. I'd love to hear about that. Otis Frichov says, ready for some rumors. Let's go, Otis Frichov. Crypto invasion, let's go. James Syracuse, Philly staking. Yeah, I think probably most people are basically Philly staking. Mr. iWebco DMS is here. Good evening. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that one. That's exactly what I thought of when I mentioned lobster traps. And in fact, we're gonna talk exactly about that, being lobster trapped in DeFi, basically. But so I think, a lot of this channel has been, over the years, a lot of this channel has been sort of about Cardano and crypto and why crypto is like a value add to the world, why it's a good thing for the world, and why our little Cardano corner of crypto is, the right kind of the right way to approach this crypto that's good for the world. Joe Davidson says, I built the yellow pages of Cardano, called it blue pages. I like it. Have you got okay, still a work in progress. I will love to see any kind of, once you have a URL or something, any kind of a link we can go visit, please let me know. I'm looking forward to this. I actually told people about this today, in real life, like people who know about Cardano. I told them about it, and people were pretty excited. The people I mentioned this to were pretty excited about it. Blue Pages ADA, NX. What is the NX part? Is it NX? You have you're saying that's the X account for the Blue Pages. Okay, excellent. No pun intended, but excellent on X. Okay, everybody go visit Blue Pages ADA on X. I'm gonna go visit it and like the profile. Everybody go visit this page and check it out. Thank you for producing something so quickly. That's awesome. I didn't expect for anything to actually be built out at all. Even just having an X profile for it, I think is an excellent start. That's like the perfect start. Rulo, hola. Thank you for joining. Everybody. So I think while a lot of this, Joe Davis is vibe coding for the win. There we go. I think this is the beauty of vibe coding for sure. Okay, I'm excited. To see what you've got going. I'm very excited for this. So I think it's important. I think it's important to talk about those things. Why crypto is good for the world, why Cardano is a good approach to crypto, those kinds of things. But then we run into these other times where we seem to be doing a lot of the right things in crypto, in Cardano. We're like roughly directionally, at least, headed in the right direction. Things are going well. We're building out things we need to build, but the rest of the world kind of conspires against us. Not really the rest of the world conspiring against us, just that global conditions are punishing us a little bit. And this happens with macroeconomics quite a bit. And that's exactly what's happening right now. So in the last couple of weeks, we've looked at price charts for Bitcoin and for Solana and for Ethereum, and it's pretty obvious the entire space is suffering. And an easy, obvious conclusion to come to is that we're just not in the right kind of liquidity environment for us to have had the year 4 of the 4-year cycle that a lot of people are planning on. And so, of course, the next question is, okay, well, is this going to be a changed cycle or no cycle? Are we going to have a year 5? Is this a 5-year cycle and 2026 is great? Or are we just dead in the water? Should we all just pack it up and go home? And that's part of what I think we should discuss tonight. So first, though, Flying Hambone. Thanks for joining, Flying Hambone. Flying Hambone says, I sent some old coworkers who are new to crypto that Charles Midnight whiteboard, and they jumped on that scavenger hunt at the last minute. Feel bad for them. Oh, they tried to jump into the scavenger mine right as it was ending. That is unfortunate. I feel bad if that's the case, but I'm glad to hear that the Midnight whiteboard video had some potency to it, just like the Cardano whiteboard video did. Mr. iWebco DMS says, well, at least there is one person building on ADA. Yeah, Joe Davidson. I don't know who else was building last night, but we all know you were either last night or today or both. Streetwise, thank you for joining. So we should go check out. Before we jump into the video, let's actually go check out. Let's see if we can find Blue Pages ADA on X. Let's just see if we can find it right now. Let's see, x.com. Let's go there. And let's check out. Let's see if we can just check out. Sorry, I've got a lot. I may have a lot going on this laptop right now while we're streaming, so it's a little slow. Please forgive me while this loads. We'll see if we can find the profile for Joe's Blue Pages right now, because I think this is awesome. Okay, loading very slow. So sorry, guys. So sorry. A lot going on here. Okay, come on, X. Okay, so I'm gonna go to Blue Pages. Blue Pages ADA. Is that the right search? No. Okay, Blue Pages. Should it be at Blue Pages ADA? Give me the exact. The site is live-ish. Whoa. Okay, at Blue Pages ADA. Thank you, guys. Thank you. At Blue Pages ADA. Okay, at Blue Pages ADA. Okay, what am I spelling wrong here? At Blue Pages ADA. How come it's not coming up? Okay, maybe I need to figure rid of the at. Blue Pages ADA. There we go. I mean, yeah, it's exactly what I typed in, but okay, here we go. Follow back immediately. There are already 7 followers, 8 followers. Following 62. Oh my goodness. There's a GitHub already. Okay, I'm really excited to see this. Joe Davidson, you have been busy. My friend. This is amazing. Cardano is the tsunami we've been screaming about, while the tourists and beachgoers keep saying there's no waves. When that wave comes in, though, there we go. Oh, this is amazing. Blue Pages ADA. All right. Okay. I'm going to post on X about this probably tomorrow. I'll probably do it tomorrow when there's a few more people on X. But that looks great. Okay, and when you say that site is live, I'm guessing we'll find the link to the site somewhere, maybe at the GitHub. We'll find the link to the site. Looks like are you saying there's stuff on the GitHub, or are you saying there's actually a site that's live? This is amazing. Thank you. Okay, I'm so excited to see this. Good. Thank you, Joe Davidson. Thank you for creating that. That's amazing. Joe says, did everything on my phone except the cleanup this afternoon when I got home today. Amazing. Okay, that GitHub link is the site. Okay, perfect. Perfect. J. Marie. Yeah, no, yeah, we do the show this time. We do the show this time every week. We don't do one in 24 hours from now, but we do this one every single time. Okay, everybody, please go like this profile, Blue Pages Ada. If you weren't here last night, this is what we talked about last night. Last night, the discussion revolved around, hey, we've done, not us in Cardano, but us in crypto, and some people in Cardano too, have done like every type of Ponzi scheme you can do in crypto. We had ICOs back in the day. We had DeFi summer. We had, there's utility in DeFi, but some of those DeFi platform, governance tokens were, what they were. Then we did PFP NFTs last cycle. Then we did meme coins this cycle. And a lot of that stuff involved a big dose of Ponzi-nomics. We need to move past that now. We need to do real commerce. We need to get real businesses on Cardano. There's a ton of us in the Cardano ecosystem, and everybody every day is sort of asking like, hey, how come there's not more activity? How come there's not more going on Cardano? And it's like, the next question should be, what do you want? More Ponzi schemes, more Ponzi-nomics, more meme coins, more NFTs, more PFP NFTs, more 10K collections? Like, no, that's not really what we want. What we want is real economics. What we want is real economics. We want real economic activity, real commerce. We all do stuff every day. We all do economic activities every single day. We should figure out, to the extent we can, we should try to do that with each other on Cardano. We have this beautiful network designed for us to do business with each other. And a lot of us have small businesses, or we do some other thing, or people are professionals and provide professional services, whatever it is. Some people have side gigs. Some people go to the farmer's market on Saturday and sell things. We can do that with each other. There's a ton of us. There's a ton of us in Cardano. We can do this with each other. And that's what Joe's project here is intended to accomplish. We can have a list. Like right now, if I try to say, hey, I want to, hire an attorney, hire a plumber, I want to buy a bar, I want to buy some artisan crafted soap. Any of these things, that somebody in Cardano could be doing. Surely there are plumbers and lawyers and all these kinds of things. There are people in Cardano who do these things, but there's no way for me to find that person and say, hey, let's do this on Cardano. Let me send you some ADA instead of dollars. We can do this now with Blue Pages. So everybody, please go like this profile. Thank you, Joe. We're going to keep following. I'm going to keep following this. Let's follow this, see how this develops, and let's see what we can do to create some traction for Blue Pages. I think this is a great start given our discussion the other night. So, yep, I can't even says that's amazing. Joe Davidson, well in. Axo is on Blue Pages. Maybe Joe's already answered that question. Mr. iWebCode DMS says looks great. That's okay. No, I know what you meant, J. Marie. I knew what you meant when you said Friday. I knew what you meant. No worries. What do you think? Arnega says, what do you think of Bodega Prediction Market? Have you used it? So I think I visited Bodega when it first opened up. I was actually thinking about Bodega just today. But I haven't used it. I haven't actually used it. I definitely like Polymarket, and I like that there is a Polymarket of Cardano. I like that Bodega exists. So maybe we should visit Bodega more often on this channel. Mission Zambia says Meld is there. Okay, so okay. Joe Davidson says worked hard arguing with the AI to get things working right. Yeah, this is only like a 24-hour. This is barely a 24-hour project. So this is the first draft, guys. This is the first draft. So After 24 hours, the fact that anything exists, I think is highly impressive. If sounds like it just needs some more curation of the list, I think that's fine. Mr. iWebCode DMS says, following Blue Pages, when AOS Community Web Store, I'd buy AOS t-shirts with ADA. Oh, this is interesting. Yeah, because we did talk about AOS shirts, and we did not talk about how to make them available with ADA, which is a little bit, I'll admit, this is a little bit trickier. It's a little bit trickier because then I have to have somebody I actually have to have sort of independent shipping and stuff going on. So that's a little bit trickier, but you're right. If we sell AOS t-shirts, it's got to be for ADA or stable coins. I think you're right. You're right. Makes it much trickier though, I have to admit. Okay, Greg's son, why should I keep my ADA? I'm down 10% and thinking I should sell before I have nothing. So, definitely not me, Greg, or anybody else is going to give you financial advice and tell you when you should sell, when you shouldn't. But one thing I would say is you're going to have a lot of pullbacks of far more than 10% in crypto. Like I think, me personally, I'm definitely a longer term guy. Like I've still got my ADA from when I was DCAing in 2018. I DCA'd all the way from 2018 until very, very recently. And I haven't sold my ADA. I've just hung on to it. So my time horizon is a lot longer. And I would have sold 100 times in between now and then, if 10% was the drawdown that triggered a sell. So, it depends on your time horizon, and nobody in this channel is probably going to give you advice. But what I would say is over any kind of a longer time horizon, you're going to see way worse than 10%. 10% is nothing in crypto. Okay, Flying Hambone. Here we go. 2002 Suzuki DRZ for sale. That is the 400cc, right? With Mikuni carbs, I believe. I would accept 1,000 worth of ADA if anyone is interested. Okay, is this the Supermoto? Is this the DRZ Supermoto? Or 2002 goes back a while. This might be before. Maybe this is the sort of the off-road bike, or it could be the Supermoto. I can't remember when they introduced the Supermoto, but I'm guessing it's the 400 with the Mikuni carbs, though. Okay, search by location. I think search by location is going to be necessary because you're going to have people who provide local services like home services, like HVAC, plumbers, roofs. You're going to have people whose professional services are limited by geography, like attorneys, doctors, all those kinds of things. So yeah, I think search by location is definitely necessary. Yeah, hindsight is 2020. And I mean, this is always my argument with the guys who try to feed you the Fibonaccios and, try to be technical analysts, the guys who are the Fibonacci masters. It's like, if there was any predictive value in the Fibonaccios, shouldn't they have told you to sell at $1.20 and buy back in, at 43 cents or whatever? Like if there was any predictive value, that's a pretty big swing. Shouldn't they have been able to tell you, sell now, guys, buy back in December, buy back a year from now in December? It's a whole year and, a huge swing. If there's any predictive value in the TA, if it's not Mel astrology, shouldn't they have been able to tell you? Otis Fricio says it's already helped me. Thanks. Wow. Okay. I can't wait to look at it. I can't wait to see it. Okay. Bo says, all I can offer is if anyone is looking for a drinking partner when on holiday in Bohol, I am here to help. There you go. Even if somebody just wants a drinking partner, maybe there could be a section like, meetup, Cardano buddy meetups, just like people in various parts of the world who are willing to meet up with other Cardano people. That could be a little dangerous. There's probably some psychos out there who you wouldn't want to meet up with. Even in our wonderful community, there's going to be some psychos, but safety issues aside, maybe it's even worth it to have just like a social section or something. Yeah, work in progress. Yeah, Joe said it's a work in progress. So I think it's probably good that people are pointing out, giving some feedback, ideas and stuff. But this thing's only been around 24 hours and it was based on a conversation, we all had on Reddit. So this is brand new. I'll use the donations to get an official URL, not just the GitHub URL. Okay, cool. Awesome. Mallow, thanks for joining. Hilldog's here. Hilldog, if you just barely jumped in, we already have the yellow pages of Cardano. Joe built it. It's called Blue Pages. You can like it. You can see it on the screen right here. You can go like the profile if you would. Yeah, that's right. I haven't even seen the site yet. I haven't even seen it yet. So Jordan, thank you for joining. Let's go. Let's go. Guinness Speaks says DCA. Says DCA. J. Marie says it's only a loss when you sell. 10% is a light rain. Oh, the DRZ is a 125. I didn't even know there were 125 DRZs. Okay. Okay. Shows what I know about 20-year-old Suzuki model lineup. But Jordan from America says, thanks for the follow, AOS. Hope everyone else knows about the Midnight Foundation announcement regarding phase 2. Which one are you talking about? Yep. Joe Davidson says, thank you for the shout out and thank you everyone for the follow. I'll update the site as often as I can. Yeah, we should try to, it's easy for something like this to emerge. It's so awesome of Joe to have built this. We should really try to support this and turn this into a movement inside of Cardano, instead of it just being something that Joe was nice enough to build and we don't support. We should all really try to support this. I'm going to go and look at I'm going to actually go look at the website and try to see if I can figure out, how we can best support this, but I'll keep bringing this up. So everybody try to help Joe out, try to add things to Joe. If you've got any kind of product or service you want to offer to other Cardano people, which I think you should do it if you can. If you've got any kind of product or service you can offer, I think you should figure out how to get yourself into the Cardano Blue Pages. I think this is a really good project. Okay. How do they do that, Joe? How would they, if somebody wants to be included in the Blue Pages, how do they do that? Is it right on the site? Is there like a button you can push to include yourself, or how should that work? Okay, Jordan from America says the phase 2 rewards haven't been reflected on your scavenger report yet. Okay, yeah. I think I noticed that yesterday. So it sounds like that might still be the case. What do you think about the business cycle theory people are talking about? Okay, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a piece of that at least. Here we go. Flying Hambone says, I can do legit SolidWorks CAD for ADA. There you go. There's a service. That Flying Hambone can provide. Joe Davidson says, yes, if you load the site, everything is laid out. Perfect. So it sounds like you can go directly to the site and you can add yourself to the Blue Pages. If you've got any kind of product or service, you should definitely go there and add yourself to the Cardano Blue Pages, right? Be mindful of, issues around loss of anonymity, but I think at the same time, we really need to start doing business across Cardano. We really need to do it. Okay, I'm going to follow this closely, Joe. Thank you so much for building that. Suggestions are sent to me for verification, and I can add to the JSON file. Okay, interesting, great. I'll get formatting automated somehow. This is awesome. I can't wait to look at this. Okay, so that's an amazing development. I did not believe that this could possibly be a thing in 24 hours. Like, vibe coding is real, everybody. Vibe coding is real. If this exists in under 24 hours, vibe coding may be the future. It's at least a big part of the future, I think. I Can't Even says, how can we help? Joe Davidson. So Joe Davidson, let people know how they can contribute. Okay. So that's an awesome way to start this discussion, right? We're doing great things. I think that's a good example. Jordan for America says, where's the link? Go to the X profile and click on this link. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think the best thing to do is just click on this link. Yep. Joe says the GitHub link is the site link at Cardano. Thanks for joining. You can join late anytime, but the link is right there. So that's the place to go. So I think this is a great example, though. For those that joined late, Joe already built out the yellow pages of Cardano. He just vibe coded the yellow pages of Cardano. It's at that profile I just had on the screen. Go there, list a product or service that you can add. You can add to the blue pages, and we can start doing business with each other. I think this is fantastic. Brian Packard says, yay, we've got our list started. That's right. Joe Davidson just built it. Joe Davidson just vibe coded it. It's awesome. Joe Davidson says, suggest removals too, please. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we should all go in there and take a look and see what we think. We should just help Joe curate the list. Okay, kick flips. There's a few people joining. So kick flips, it's right here. Go to this page, Blue Pages ADA on X, and here's the link right here. So just go there. BindoCam, it's okay. Feel free to join late anytime. And yep, here's the page. Okay, Joe Davidson says, show the site. Okay, let's go to the site. Before we jump into the video, let's do it. Let's go to the site. Oh my goodness. Blue Pages, the strict real world Cardano directory. Oh, you're saying it's strictly real world. Okay, that's great. Only projects with revenue, real users, or enterprise contracts. Proof required. Ooh, I like that. As of November 20th, 2025, 66 projects verified daily, still working projects in progress. Suggestions are welcome. Okay, first of all, am I already in night mode, or do I need to click on this to get to night mode? Maybe I'm already in night mode. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. No, it's just a little bit slow, I think. Okay. Maybe that's day mode if I click it. Okay, anyways, there's a switch there for night mode. Let's look at the projects. Okay, this is obviously day mode. I'm trying not to burn your eyes out. People always used to complain when I go to Wikipedia and the whiteness burned their eyes. So I promise you, I'm trying to go to night mode. Okay, we'll worry about night mode later. Here we've got 66 projects. World Mobile, Atala Prison, Empowa, Minswap, Endmaker, Blockfrost, IOG Commercial, Liquid, FIFA Collect. What is official FIFA NFT platform, Tangible, Indigo? Okay, so this, yeah, I agree. This is pretty easy to navigate. And obviously there's a bunch of projects in here. This is a little bit, the projects I'm seeing so far are a little bit more like you'd see in Cardano Cube. Clarence Luxury Brand Product Authentication, USDM, Tap Tools, Anvil, Vesper, Sea Explorer, Revuto, Flint Wallet. Okay, Pool Tool. Okay, yeah, these all seem to be, with the exceptions people have noted, seem to be actual projects. I'd love to see real world sort of enterprises in here. Obviously, these are the ones that were available to Joe to put on the list. Okay, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I think the interface is great. This is amazing for a 24-hour build. Good job, Joe. This is amazing. Honestly, amazing for 24 hours. Yeah, I think we've got to flesh this out with a bunch of real world businesses. I think if we can get a bunch of like real world, service providers, good providers in here, then it's going to look amazing. So we'll have all this sort of on-chain stuff. I would call most of these like on-chain. Even though, I know there's like real humans in the real world behind all these, but I would call most of these on chain. If we get a bunch of sort of off chain enterprises that want to do business on chain, I think that would be amazing. So, I think that's amazing. Good job, Joe. I think that's amazing. Okay, that was amazing. Elliot Adams says, what was the project for the plastic cleanup? I remember that one, and I also can't remember the name. I think I'm not sure if there were a couple because I know the CF was talking to somebody the other day, and I'm not sure if that was the same as the original one we saw or if that was a different plastic cleanup project. Brian Packard says I may be able to use a CAD person and pay in ADA. Need to check with my accountant. Look at that. We didn't even need the website already. Just people connecting in the comments. This is what we've got to do. This is what the website should be for. Exactly this kind of thing. One person can provide CAD services. One person may be able to use CAD services. This is perfect. Ease Weeze. Yeah, I think everybody's doing great. This is doing great after Joe's contribution there. This is great. I do not know. Yeah, I don't know if that's the was that the one? Was that the project with the little tiny NFTs that kind of looked like it was going to be a metaverse, but it was actually just like little NFT images of little houses. Is that what that one was? I forgot all about that. Yeah. Yeah, for real. Yeah, for real. He really created it in 24 hours. P2P would be nice. Yep. Yep. I forgot all about that. That was like that was a project out of Korea, if I remember correctly. I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that one. Okay. Okay. That was great. Thank you, Joe. You made my day. Thank you for that. That was quite the contribution. Thank you. Appreciate that so much. Okay, I'm going to explore that more. And everybody think about how we can turn this into a real movement. Like hashtag do business on Cardano. That is great. Okay. Yep, we'll get back to the show, but thank you. That was the greatest surprise ever. Okay. Okay. Let's get back to Cardano and what I'm talking about in this thumbnail. So this house is obviously going to fall off the cliff. You can be the person living in this house and engage in a lot of cognitive dissonance. You can be up there and say, hey, I built this house 10 years ago. The house has stood strong, hasn't fallen off the cliff yet. It's unlikely that out of all the days this house has stood here, that tomorrow is the day it falls off the cliff. It's unlikely it's going to be tomorrow, so I'm fine to stay another day. But you are in a precarious situation. And I feel like right now, it's not even like a US thing, it's a global thing. We're kind of doing this similar type of cognitive dissonance. We're actually in a very precarious situation, and not crypto. I'm saying the global economy is in this very precarious situation. And the temporary cure for that situation is really good for crypto. And probably crypto is the long-term remedy for that precarious situation. So we're going to jump right now into what I'm talking about. Cardano Universe says the Cardano content creators on YouTube need to focus more on doing what Joe is doing and less price chart sentiment. Exactly. And I would argue the builders need to focus more on stuff like what Joe did in 24 hours of vibe coding and less on creating really technically advanced Ponzi schemes. Like we don't need the world's most state-of-the-art Ponzi schemes, right? We don't need that. We don't need 25 billion ways to yield farm a Ponzi scheme. We do not need that. That's not really a contribution to society. That's just the quickest way to make a buck. We don't need that. Okay. What am I talking about here? I'm talking about this. So this could apply to pretty much any government in the industrialized world. They're all doing this right now. We're going to use the US as an example here just because the data is very accessible. But this could be almost any, highly industrialized government. I can't even say Western government because they're doing it globally. Everybody's doing it across the globe. Every industrialized modern economy is doing this. So this chart shows you the interest payments that the US federal government needs to make. And you notice if we go back here, go back to 2009, right? You're talking 352 billion, not that big a deal. And not that big a change from, so that was 2009. We can even go 2010, still 360 billion. Not that big a change from 1990. 1990, we've got, almost 300 billion, right on the cusp. Q1 of 91, we had 300 billion. 2010, we're looking at, 360 billion. So not that big a change. Then we go from there to here. All of a sudden in 2019, just 9 years later, we're at 586 billion, half a trillion, right? Then we go from this little dip here at the end of 2020, where we're at, still kind of half a trillion. All of a sudden we go from there. That's just 2020. We go from there to 2025, where we're looking at 1.1 trillion. This is just the interest. These are just the annual interest payments on the loan. This isn't like all the interest on all the loans until maturity. This is just the annual interest payment. Every single year, they've got to pay this amount. And problematically, as everybody knows, the debt just keeps getting higher and higher. So what do we know? What do we know about how governments, since the dawn of time, how do they deal with government debt? They deal with government debt by debasement. And look at this. This is like the most incredible debt with the most incredible interest payment you could ever imagine. Literally 1.16 trillion in interest due in, annualized Q2 2025. This is an incredible amount of debt. Imagining, and like our last Cardano parabolic high was here. It was here. Like they issued so much liquidity. They created so much liquidity, which basically creates debasement here, that Cardano went above $3. Now we're clear up here. I would argue that if the solution to the problem when we were down here was to issue such an incredible amount of liquidity that Cardano went above $3, I would argue that probably there's going to be some significant liquidity and debasement to accomplish the debasement that needs to happen to deal with this level of debt up here. And if you don't like the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis's chart, you can also just look at this chart from Treasury, which has the exact same number, 1.22 trillion interest expense in 2025. And that's at an average interest rate of 3.363. So it's actually a lower interest rate than the federal funds rate is right now. This is a lower interest rate. We're already at 1.22 trillion in annualized interest expense in 2025. And things are only getting worse. I think everybody's aware of that. Things are just getting worse. So you'd think, oh, this is looking super terrible. Surely they've already flooded us with a tsunami of liquidity. Well, that's what has generally happened every 4 years since the advent of crypto. Since 2009, the launch of Bitcoin, it's happened like every 4 years. We've been on this 4-year liquidity cycle, which is basically just a 4-year debt repayment cycle. Like basically just the government issuing notes, taking out loans that mature in 4 years. So every 4 years, they have to roll over that debt. And it's a lot easier for them to do that if they issue a bunch of liquidity, debase the currency, and then it's easier to pay off that old debt. Make sure interest rates are really low. If you're borrowing money, you want the interest rate on the loan to be really low. That's happened every 4 years. Didn't happen this year for all the reasons we've talked about on this channel. And as you can see, we've just been since, again, that whole Cardano high happened about right here, right here. And you had some quantitative easing for a short period of time after that. And then, somewhere right in here, like end of Q1, first parts of Q2, 2022, it's just been, with the exception of this minor blip right here, it's just been quantitative tightening all the way down, guys. Quantitative tightening turtles all the way down. Nothing good for a risk asset like crypto. It's just been tightening all the way down. What do we know about that? Since the announcement of the decision in October, I think it was, at that Philadelphia meeting we covered on this channel. what we know is that this whole trend that's been going on since clear back here, this ends on December 1st. December 1st, the quantitative tightening finally ends, right? If you look at this, is it any question why crypto is in the terrible state it was? Like this thing down here produced that Cardano $3 price right here. This happening, this huge quantitative easing event happened and produced $3. Since then, we've had this, right? Very, very different environments. And even when we look at real M2, which we've looked at before on this channel, you see the same thing. You see this wall of liquidity and then this horrible decline in liquidity, very insubstantial rise right here, nothing to write home about compared to this giant wall of liquidity. So it should be no surprise that Cardano is not doing what it did in September of 2021. Making matters slightly worse. You'll remember, what was it, just a month ago? We looked at the CME FedWatch chart, which gave us percentage chances of various interest rates. Right now, we're at 375 to 400 basis points. And the chances of us being at 350 to 375 on December 10th was like 98%. It was 98%. Then the government shut down and the Federal Reserve couldn't get numbers from the Department of Labor. Now we're looking at 35.6%. 35.6% chance of a rate cut on December 10th. Some analysts are saying that's wrong and chances are good. We'll get some kind of a rate cut, but not CME FedWatch. They're saying low chances of a cut. So yeah, I apologize. Things are going to get a little bit more rosy in just a second, Guinness Speaks. I promise. Sim 1790 says Monopoly Money Blues. Yep, I agree. That's the problem. I think we're all in crypto because we're sick of the Monopoly Money Blues. So before we move on, I just want to hit this comment. Mission Zambia says Nature's Nectar is a good fit for Blue Pages. They sell Zambian honey on Palmyra. I'll tag them. Excellent. Okay, see, people are already identifying target products that maybe could go in the Blue Pages. I think that's fantastic. Cardano Universe says, I get that Cardano content creators on YouTube spend much time selling their membership programs to followers, but mass marketing is key. Yep. We got to spend more time marketing. Robert Scott says, we need a movement started, founding entities to complete the RWA set, CF, Emergo, IO, Midnight, along with our treasury, Chainlink, Tier 1 stables. Aave, stop arguing with our money. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think we need to go deep. I agree. We need to go deep on RWAs, real world assets. And I would say not even just real world assets. We need to go deep on, because when you say real world assets, you can mean a lot of different things. You can mean, the kind of use cases that like Palmyra is attacking, having to do with tracing and those kind of things. And you could also mean tokenization of things like real estate. So it's a pretty broad label. I would say we also need to do real world commerce. If we just do real world commerce on chain, that's also a thing. Maybe RWC could end up being as big a deal as RWAs, right? Real world commerce, might also involve tokenizing goods or tokenizing services or something. It could be the tokenization of assets as well. But I think there's also real world commerce, and nobody talks about that for some reason. So, okay, getting away from the blues part of this. So, obviously, the Fed's not helping out right now. But what happens next year, right? Like, obviously, this is the part that makes you jump up and say, okay, this is such a tremendous increase in interest payments, right? It's like we saw liquidity events, since, we saw the beginnings of Bitcoin right here. Satoshi white paper, launch of the Genesis block. We saw that right here in 2009, right? And we saw lots of this Fourier cycle liquidity event stuff in between here and here in Cardano specifically. the biggest liquidity event ever and the biggest parabolic high happened here. We saw that here. And if the purpose of liquidity is sort of to help roll over the debt, and then you go from here up to here, right? The biggest increase in the interest payments, such a crazy increase compared to everything that happened through here. This is like, an increase, but then we have this. It's like, man, if there was liquidity in between here and here, what is this going to result in? So I went to our friend Grok 4.1 thinking, not the quick one, the one that thinks deeply. I went here and okay, there's some pretty funny comments. I'll hit those comments in just a second. There's some pretty interesting comments, but I went here and I just asked Grok, will the federal government need to increase liquidity to roll over the national debt in 2026? And Grok 4.1 thinking says yes. And this is a little bit of an appeal to authority, which I think is a fallacy of thinking. Joe Davidson points out Grok 4.1 thinking is amazing. I agree with that, and I don't want to appeal to authority. I don't want to treat any LLM as like an authority, but I think it gives us an example of logical analysis that can help sort of frame the issue. So don't think of this as an appeal to authority. It's not like whatever Grok says is right, or whatever OpenAI, ChatGPT 5.1, whatever's the latest, 5 whatever is the latest. It's not that it's always going to be right and this is an appeal to authority. It's just that this is going to frame some issues. So Grok 4.1 says, yes, the US federal government will almost certainly need to take steps to support or increase system-wide liquidity to smoothly roll over the national debt in 2026. So they say approximately 8 to 9 trillion in marketable treasury securities matures in calendar year 2026. This follows another big year in 2025 of 9.2 trillion, with much of the 2025 maturities already rolled or in process as of November 2025. So this figure represents roughly 1/3 of the outstanding marketable debt in each year, driven by heavy short-term issuances. Total public debt currently stands at 38.1 trillion. The fiscal year 2026 deficit is tracking towards 2 to 2 trillion. So this means that they can't just sell 8 to 9 trillion. They can't just sell 8 to 9 trillion to cover the debt that's maturing in 2026. They've got another 2 to 2.2. So we're really talking about 10 to 11 trillion in total gross issuances next year, maturities plus net new borrowing. So of course we got the official Treasury stance. I think the important thing here is, of course, the Treasury is saying, what they've got currently planned will be plenty for them to be able to lean on T-bill issuances, and that'll give them, everything they need. But Grok somewhere in here points out that they would basically be working against themselves if they admitted at this point that T-bill issuances by themselves would be enough to support the rollover of the maturities, the issuance of the new debt, this 10 to 11 trillion. So market realities and risks. Market participants and analysts are far more concerned. So they're saying this is the official Treasury response, the official Treasury stance, that everything's going to be fine. They'll just sell some T-bills. But the market is a little bit more concerned because of weakening foreign demand. Japan, China continue to reduce holdings. They're not buying more, they're buying less, according to Grok. Banks are constrained by regulatory capital treatment of treasuries. Funds already largely drained. Reverse repo near zero since mid-2025. This has come up recently. You'll see a lot of analysts right now are mentioning that part of the reason we've had such a horrible, couple of months here, horrible end to 2025, is because normally when this kind of thing starts happening, they've got all these tools in the Treasury, all these tools in the federal government throughout various agencies, all these things they can do, all these tools to inject some liquidity. And we used to talk about that a lot on this channel. There would be these reverse repo injections, and all of a sudden we'd wake up and we'd be like, oh, they just threw another 20 billion into the markets. They just injected some liquidity. And it was kind of like happening on this ongoing basis. The government's been closed for 40 days. think about it. The last 40 days were terrible, right? It's because they didn't have any of these tools at their disposal. They couldn't do any of these things. Treasury was literally closed. The treasury was closed. They couldn't do any of the things they would normally do to inject liquidity in the market to kind of prop things up. This is what the market looks like when you can't do all this anti-Austrian economic stuff, when you can't do all of this manipulation stuff. This is what it looks like. Things start crashing. Crappy Tech says, good morning, everyone. Made it eventually. Have we crashed again? I feel like we're constantly crashing, just in crypto in general. Talk 378 says, dog, it's literally an affirmation machine. It is, but it is also hitting us with the numbers here. It's framing the issues. That's why I said, this is not like an appeal to authority, but it's gonna frame the issues for us here, and you can kind of come to your own decision. Just like anybody who's speaking, I don't think you should really rely on anybody as an authority for future events, which is why we don't do predictions on this channel. But I think it is important to understand the issues. It is important to frame the issues and make your own decisions. So that's how I think of this. Cardano Universe says the Cardano content video maker covers must lose the crashing titles. Yeah, crashing is not good. Dolph B. Wolf, good morning. Thank you for joining. Glad you're here. Okay, so this is the important part of Grok's answer here. So Grok is basically saying, hey, if there are going to be liquidity measures in 2026, what will they look like? So this is the important part I wanted to get to here. If we say, I think it's important to understand something I've mentioned on this channel, that the federal government has many means by which to inject liquidity into the markets. It's not just the Fed balance sheet. There are many, many ways in which they can make this happen. So Grok here says, expected liquidity measures for 2026, most fixed income strategists, JP Morgan, bunch of different parties expect one or more of the following in 2026 to prevent auction failures or yield spikes. So think about that. What they don't want are for their treasury auctions to fail, like nobody buys their debt, and they don't want to have to increase the yield, pay more interest in order to get people to buy the debt. And remember, we just talked about how China and Japan, at least according to Grok, are buying less, right? And we're certainly not at the height of like our best relationship with China right now. So it kind of makes sense that if we're not on the best of terms right now with China, it kind of makes sense that maybe we shouldn't rely on them to buy as many treasuries as they have in the past. Okay, so on to the liquidity measures. So Grok talks about stealth treasury QE. So usually when we talk about QE, we're talking about the Fed balance sheet. That's the Federal Reserve balance sheet increasing. And Grok is also talking about stealth treasury QE. Treasury funds more via bills rather than coupons. Money funds and other short-term buyers absorb supply without duration risks. They're moving to shorter term instruments. Stealth treasury QE, according to Grok. Fed pauses or ends QT entirely. So that's supposed to happen on December 1st. Stops or slows balance sheet reduction once reserves hit ample threshold, and Grok acknowledges very high chance of this. Treasury runoff already ended October 2025. Mortgage-backed security runoff likely ends in 2026. So they've said that they announced it in October. December 1st would kind of be the end of quantitative tightening. So yield curve control or QE resumption. So Fed buys longer dated treasuries if 10-year yields approach 5 to 5.5%. So this is if yields spike, if they have to start paying more in interest to get people to buy the treasuries because like China's buying less, maybe Japan's buying less, then the Fed, so we're talking about Treasury, the Treasury Department issuing these instruments and the Fed buying them. The Fed actually buying them. Grok says this is a medium likelihood fiscal dominance scenario. And then we've got the rate cuts. We talked about the rate cuts. We've got a Treasury general account drawdown to 600 to 700 billion, releases reserves into the banking system during heavy issuance periods. So Grok says this is a high probability. Treasury already used this tool multiple times in 2025. And then we've got all kinds of regulatory relief, which would allow banks to buy more US Treasury securities. There are rules about, how much they can have, all those kind of things, balances. So this is kind of interesting. The Fed's October 2025 decision to stop Treasury runoff, that was at the Philadelphia speech, I believe. I believe that was the announcement of that decision. The December 1st end to QT was the opening act of liquidity support. The structural buyer base, foreign central banks plus a Fed that absorbed debt in prior decades, has shrunk dramatically. Again, they're saying, hey, Bank of China, Bank of Japan are probably going to have less appetite for those treasury auctions. So they're saying the demand has shrunk dramatically while supply is rising. Historical precedents include the 2013 taper tantrum. 2022 QT induced volatility shows markets can handle large supply only with central bank backstop or much higher yields. So here's Grok's take on this. And again, not an appeal to authority, but just, a way to frame the discussion. Treasury will not publicly admit it needs extra liquidity because that would be self-defeating. But the Fed has already begun providing it. Obviously, they don't want to tell these foreign central banks who might buy the Treasury securities, they don't want to tell them, hey, we already think you're going to demand higher yields, because then they will demand higher yields. So they're saying they're not going to publicly admit that. But further measures are highly probable in 2026 to prevent a funding accident. The alternative, letting yields rip higher to attract buyers, would explode interest expense, which we just saw was already over $1 trillion. And they're saying it could explode to above 1.5 trillion annually by 2027 and conflict with administration growth objectives. Expect continued bill heavy issuance plus Fed accommodation, higher inflation, or dollar weakness is path of least resistance. So there's one analysis that we might see much, much higher liquidity. And when I look at this, I can't imagine how we see a deviation from the history of governments just drowning the economy in liquidity when they run into this problem, which is overspending. This is like every government in the history of governments. They overspend, they collect debt, the interest on the debt gets too high. How do they remedy this problem? Always with liquidity, always with debasement. This is why Bitcoin was created by Satoshi. Okay, Cardano Universe says new retail is not interested in crashing with blood red pictures. Retail wants positive content with positive outlook. Yeah, I mean, you've probably noticed I don't do those kinds of thumbnails, and it's kind of all you see from crypto YouTube accounts right now because it gets clicks. So they will often give you a thumbnail that maybe is not good for crypto. Maybe it sends the wrong message. Maybe it reinforces negative trends, but they're going to do it for the clicks. So they're always going to do that. You'll see even, YouTubers who are big proponents of a community, you see them like amplifying and just like exacerbating bad things that happen. It's like if the founder of the community did something bad, they're going to talk about it in giant red letters, even if it's bad for the ecosystem, because they want the clicks. So I don't think that's going to change. Guinness Speak says that is why we DCA, think long. Yeah, that's pretty much my response to it. It's just, it's these kinds of trends are, the price we're at right now in Cardano and every crypto ecosystem besides Zcash, basically. The prices we're at, I mean, these things happen. These huge drawdowns happen because volatility is very high in crypto. And, on the flip side of that, the reward we get are those parabolic highs. Like it was crazy in 2021 when Cardano went up above $3. But you can't really have that in crypto without the volatility to the downside as well. So you've got to think long term and actually be around for those parabolic highs. At least, things could change going forward. Could be totally different going forward. There's no guarantees here at all. But the history of crypto has been that you can't have the one without the other. So Joe Davidson says, I would say affirmation machine. I wouldn't say affirmation machine. It told me I was a dumbass while vibe coding. I needed that, to be honest. There you go. It was not being very affirming of Joe Davidson's vibe coding session. So that's kind of the experience I have too. I find that um, AI often, like LLMs, will often tell me what I don't want to hear. So that's kind of been my experience too. Cardano Universe says, look at what's on the horizon. Youth Promo says CBDCs will play a significant role in addressing the 37 trillion in debt disappearing just like magic. Yeah, I mean that's like that could be very, I would say, traumatic, and maybe a tragedy if we saw something like that. Like if they tried to do the thing where the government just sort of switches from one currency to another. It's like, oh, the dollar's going away. Now we're all going to be using this central bank digital currency. That's another thing that governments have done since the dawn of time. It's like they debase the first currency so badly that they have to switch to a new currency. And the new currency, of course, is never a one-for-one trade with the old currency. It's this ratio that's intended to, basically make the old currency just sort of go away. That's what a lot of people fear with CBDCs. I was really glad a couple of years ago, I covered it on the channel, when Jerome Powell was asked about CBDCs. And we all knew that MIT, the sort of crypto lab at MIT, I forget what they call it. They call it like the digital something something lab at MIT. I believe they were involved with the Boston Fed in doing a lot of experiments on, the prospects for a CBDC. They were doing a lot of work researching what CBDCs could be. Jerome Powell was asked about this, and his answer was that, I remember he said, frankly, I don't even know if the American people would want that kind of thing. I felt very relieved when I heard that, but then again, I think this is something we've got to be worried about. Even though he said what I was glad to hear, I think we've got to be worried about this. Grand Slam says we are in a bear market, deep and protracted, worst place to put your money for at least one more year. So I think there's a lot of, in a market like this, risk assets are all, kind of in trouble, as we've seen. All risk assets are kind of in trouble, but, crypto is more volatile than any of them. So we get punished the hardest for sure. We get punished very, very hard when this kind of thing happens. Charles says Bitcoin plus Cardano plus midnight is all we need. Yeah, I'm not surprised he didn't say also Ethereum. I'm not surprised he didn't mention Ethereum or Solana. Systemic issues aside, doesn't the world feel sick these days? We need hopes and less idiocracy. We definitely need less idiocracy. I feel like we're definitely living through that movie for sure. That's the back of the t-shirt. AOS doesn't do positive content. So I like to think we do positive content. I think we do a lot of positive content here. It's just that I think you got to I think you have to examine the issues of the day. I think you got to examine the issues of the day if you're being intellectually honest. So Cardano Universe says, I watch Paul Barron TV, for example. He's a quality show and professional communication. He hates Charles, but that's okay. Charles has many friends. Oh, okay. Uncle Thanos, thank you for joining. Man, if you don't take that chart off the screen, Ray Dalio is going to pop in my dreams tonight. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, let's move along. I agree. We don't want to dwell too much on that. So here's something from one of our own. Thomas Kirkpatrick had this response today, which I thought was very, very appropriate. Pucky Hawk, actually good timing. Your timing is excellent. So Thomas Kirkpatrick had this response, which I appreciated very much. It was a response to Charles. Charles said, Midnight Well has a nice ring to it. Who's going to take the mantle? This was the perfect response from Thomas Kirkpatrick. Obviously there were 152 responses, and a lot of them were people saying like, I will gladly be the new Cardano. Well, basically, but I thought this was the only appropriate response. So I thought this kind of captured a lot of the sentiment towards this, right? It's like Cardano will you can have different perspectives on why Cardano well left. He was obviously his approach to how much money should be spent on the treasury was, a conservative one. He wanted to spend less. I think he was unhappy with how much money IOG asked for, a lot of these kinds of things. And, there was a little bit of drama there. Charles said some things. Cardano Wells said some things. We all loved Cardano well, though. I think I'm safe in saying, most of us probably loved Cardano well. I certainly did. Sad to see him go, but I'm with Thomas Kirkpatrick. It's like it would be a tall order for somebody to come along and be the midnight well in the same way Cardano well was. So I don't think we should try to search out a midnight well to replace Cardano well. I think we were lucky to have Cardano well while we had him. And probably nobody can fill those same shoes. But good response by Thomas Kirkpatrick. Also, there's also the toll that kind of takes on an individual for somebody to do what Cardano well did. It's almost unrealistic to expect that somebody would do that for free. There are a lot of people who could try, who would be happy to try to fill those shoes, but somebody as capable as Cardano well, getting them to do it for free is almost unrealistic. Cardano well was just genuinely, seemed to me at least, to be genuinely enthusiastic about the Cardano community that he was happy to do what he did. I think the reason I do this is the same, just genuine enthusiasm. But there are a lot of people with that same level of enthusiasm, but the Venn diagram of people who would be happy to do it like that and people who actually can do it the same way Cardano well did it, I think that Venn diagram, it's tough to say whether there's any intersection there. So anyways, good response by Thomas Kirkpatrick. Metatron says, have you ever wondered what the market would look like if BlackRock Bank didn't exist? Yeah, this is something I've thought about a lot in 2025. I do believe that altcoins like Cardano would have been better off if we had not had the institutional adoption. I think the big thing is the lack of liquidity. Like everything, we would still be in trouble. We still wouldn't have had the 2025 year 4 of the 4-year cycle like we wanted. It still wouldn't have happened. But I kind of think what happened was the institutional adoption of basically just Bitcoin and a tiny bit into Ethereum and Solana, but really just like 100% into Bitcoin. I think that kind of created this momentum where anybody who was going to come in, anybody from retail who was going to come in to crypto saw the momentum in Bitcoin and just jumped into Bitcoin. And it kind of sucked all the air out of the room. Because what happened in past cycles, if you're around, you remember there'd be a huge amount of momentum into Bitcoin. And then that momentum would subside. Bitcoin would kind of give up the reins, and then altcoins would take over. And then by the end of the cycle, the altcoin cycle would end. But because there was such a huge influx of money into Bitcoin, and like BlackRock just kept buying the BlackRock inflows just like never ended. It just kept going and going and going and going, which is great. I mean, I think it's a testament to how much Larry Fink really believes. It's great that he really believes and it's not just fake. But it kind of sucked all the air out of the room, and we didn't. I wonder how much better this could have gone for the rest of the altcoins if we didn't have that. I mean, I'm not saying I wish we wouldn't have had the institutional adoption, but I'm saying I wonder how different it would have been. Okay. Sim 1790 says, well, was a good one. I agree. Flying Hambone says, rest in peace, Cardano well. Totally agree. He's out there somewhere. Cardano well is out there. He's probably still consuming. I would imagine he's still checking in, seeing how things are going. He's just He's just keeping to himself. I would put it that way. I guess. I mean, maybe somebody can tell me. Maybe somebody can tell me he's actually posting from one of his other accounts. So I haven't even checked actually. Cardano Universe says BlackRock is Satan. Okay. Mission Zambia is not romantically in love with Paul Barron. Okay. Pucky Hawk says, well, it's like this. My wife was shopping on Amazon for Black Friday and I had to go fix. Okay, that's why Pucky Hawk says the timing of his arrival happened when it did. Okay. So let's look at something else. This is some good news. So you guys probably know this is Paul Graywall, Chief Legal Officer for Coinbase. He seems like a very smart and capable guy. And his estimation of what's going on in the Senate right now is that there's a remarkable consensus in the Senate for crypto legislation now. This is great because that draft that came out of agriculture sucked. That was the worst draft ever. And we've seen other people in the Senate kind of like almost like threatening drafts. And they're the kind of people who I also think would possibly produce the worst drafts, right? Of a market structure bill. If you haven't been listening to this channel, you may not know the Clarity Act passed the House. It was a resounding success, very easily passed the House. Everything was great. Went to the Senate and we had a rough start. The left proposed a terrible draft, very different than the Clarity Act. And then the government shut down and then the government reopened and we got this draft out of the Agriculture Committee. Why is the Agriculture Committee involved? Because that's where commodities live inside Congress, because a lot of agricultural products are commodities. That draft was terrible and really skeletal. So this is good progress. This means good things are actually happening. Maybe we can just ignore those little speed bumps in the road. Maybe things are actually much better than we think. I think Paul Graywall is very, very capable, very smart, and no one is probably as on top of this as him. He's probably there's only a few people who are watching this kind of stuff as closely as he is. Like we've talked about even this week, Brian Armstrong and all of Coinbase are very, very engaged with the lobbying process in DC. So I trust Paul Graywall when he's saying this. There's probably a dose of optimism that goes along with this to kind of encourage the Senate. But I think this is a pretty good development. I can't even says, how funny would it be if he took up the Midnight Well mantle? You mean if like Charles just pretended to be Midnight Well and acted like Cardano Well did, but in the context of Midnight? That would be hilarious if we didn't know. And then like 3 years down the road, he revealed that it was actually him all along. I think it would be hilarious. A lot of people would feel betrayed, of course, but it would be pretty hilarious. That would be pretty funny. Does it seem to you that banks are like a Trojan horse? I don't think so. I think they are exactly what we think they are. I don't think they're like hiding what they are. They'll do anything. They'll do anything they're allowed to if they make money. I mean, if there's any financial activity you can do and make money and the regulators will let them do it, banks will do it. So they weren't allowed to do anything in crypto before now, largely. So the reason we're seeing them now it's not some grand strategy. It's just they're finally allowed to do it. So they're doing it, of course, And I mean, there was kind of a learning curve, like we had the Jamie Dimons of the world and the Warren Buffetts of the world, saying that crypto sucked for like, decades. And, that's turned a little bit. Even Jamie Dimon has turned a new leaf, not so much Warren Buffett, but Jamie Dimon has turned a new leaf. Obviously they're very different characters doing very different things, but, a lot of the same people listening to these people. And, seeing like Larry Fink embrace crypto, there was that going on, but really I think it's just they'll just do anything where they can make money, and they're finally being allowed to do crypto. So crypto, Joe Davidson says crypto is still a small fish in the large pond of real world finance. Very true. Very true. It's like a pet project for guys like Larry Fink. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Metatron says, now there will be the crypto they want and as they dictate. The possibilities for manipulation are greater with digital money and they can't restrain themselves. I think that's certainly true. They probably immediately understood they're going to be able to do things with crypto that they never could have done with fiat. But people like Caitlin Long, who knows the banking system very well, point out that there's also problems with settlement times. She believes the banking world is not quite ready for the crazy speed of crypto because like in fiat you've got settlement times. You know what I mean? It's like things take days to settle. In crypto, things settle 24/7, 365 in a split second. She points out a lot of scenarios in which that might be a problem for banks. So I'm still waiting for the other foot to fall on that one. Martin P, thank you for joining. What's up? Thank you for joining. Metatron says crypto, which was supposed to be a monetary paradise, will become our hell. Create a third party and abolish the Fed. Make America great again. Yeah, that's definitely the Austrian economics approach. I'm sympathetic. I'm sympathetic. I think I wouldn't mind seeing a world where we don't have that level of monetary manipulation. I'm very sympathetic to that. Yeah, a photo of Charles standing in front of his fireplace in the log cabin with a huge well hanging above the mantle. That would be terrible. No, that is not the way we should honor the memory of the Cardano well. like Charles standing with his foot on a well and a harpoon in his hand. That I got to admit, when that drama went down, it crossed my mind. Like that image is pretty easy to make. um and the thought did cross my mind, but I respect Cardano well too much for that. I mean, that is kind of, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that that's not a little bit an accurate representation of what happened, for better or worse. But yeah, I respect Cardano well way too much to ever actually make that image. I'm sure somebody did. I think I saw some low scale versions of that. Guinness Speaks wants to know how old everybody is. I'm pretty old. Guinness Speaks. Cardano Universe says we are all getting old waiting. AOS is 2009 BTC years old. I'm actually like 20. So I think I first heard about, I read the Wired article, but I have a friend who claims he told me about Bitcoin in, I forget what year he thinks he told me about it, but I definitely got involved in that 2012, 2013 period because I live blogged about the Mt. Gox hack and the protests at the Mt. Gox headquarters in Japan. Not live blogged like I was with the protesters, but I was talking about it on social media as it was happening. And then I think I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013 or 2014. So when it was very cheap, very, very cheap. So I'm not quite 2009 BTC years old, but I might be, as far as owning it, it's like 2012, 2013, 2014. I think owning it was 2013, 2014. But like talking about it earlier. Okay, Gary H says, beautiful weekend ahead, forest walks, surfing, and killing time until the 8th of December. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Very nice. Very nice. Oh, Martin P says, bought Monero in 2014. Yeah, that's early. You've been around a long time, Martin P. Good job. Good job. Okay. The thing that somebody mentioned in the comments immediately, I mentioned that we were going to talk about this, so we got to hit this. It's true, guys. It is heavy hearts. It is heavy heart season. We're going to be seeing a lot of these posts. This one, I actually kind of laughed because as soon as I realized what this was, I was like shocked. It didn't say with a heavy heart. Instead, it just says it is with great sadness. That actually made me kind of happy not to see another. It is with a heavy heart kind of post. That's what I expect these to always say. So, but it is heavy heart season where you see a lot of projects explaining how they're not going to be able to do what everyone thought they were going to do. So You got to, and people were commenting that they had some of the assets of this project tied up in DeFi. As they read this announcement, they actually had assets of the project in DeFi as they're reading this, which is terrible. But this is James Sarah. Okay, this is a really interesting detail. So people sometimes hear about, as part of like crypto lore, they hear about Mount Gox. What not a lot of people realize, which is what James is pointing out here, is that Mount Gox, before it was a crypto exchange, before it was a Bitcoin exchange, and it was like the first big widely used one. And then there was a hack, and Magical Tux was the French guy in Japan running it. His cat, would sometimes jump on his keyboard, and he would blame problems in the exchange on the cat jumping on the keyboard. Anyways, he bought this exchange. Originally, it was called Mount Gox. But the reason it was called Mount Gox was because it was Magic the Gathering online exchange. Not everybody knows about this detail, but Mount Gox was actually Magic the Gathering online exchange. It was built as a Magic card trading exchange, which is a really funny detail. Cardano Universe is over a 4-year period. I've watched Cardano creators growing gray hair in time lapse. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, we're all getting a little long in the tooth. But okay, back to this though. So this is a great example. So obviously, whenever you see these heavy heart posts, there are going to be a variety of responses in the comments, but a lot of them are going to be basically, how dare you? How long have you known? Was this your plan all along? Did you build anything at all? What did you deliver? It's like a lot of anger, rightfully so. If you bought assets related to a project like this, you're not going to be happy about it. And I don't know anything about this project. I had literally never even heard the name of this project until I saw this post circulating today. I literally had never even heard the name of this project. But when we talk about lobster traps on this channel, this is the essence of it. No matter what, level of fault you want to assign to whoever's behind this project, the best you can do, the one thing you can say, sorry, I was reading a comment down here. The one thing you can say is that, in order to get lobster trapped in a project like this, you have to give up custody of your assets. So in this case, if you're buying assets of a project like this, you're basically, trading your ADA. You're trading ADA for the assets of the project, but you're basically giving them your ADA. You're giving them custody of your ADA. Sure, you're getting something in exchange, so you think of it as a purchase, but really you're giving them custody of your ADA, and they're giving you something they invented, right? So you have to think about that. This person is giving me something they just invented, because it's pretty easy. You can mint tokens on Cardano pretty easy. It's not impossible. But the important part, the functional part here, is you gave up custody of your ADA. So I think up above, somebody said, what are you doing with your ADA? Mine's all in DeFi. So my response to that is I try really hard not to get lobster trapped, right? So when people say mine's in DeFi, that can mean a lot of different things. But, here's a case where buying the assets of this project and putting it in DeFi, was a mistake. And the mistake was not even the putting it in DeFi part. It's not like the DeFi platform you had it in got hacked. It's like giving up custody of your ADA was the problem. The very first thing you did, trading your ADA for something else. And sometimes we trade our ADA for some other asset. Sometimes we trade it for some yield. And the root problem is giving up custody of your ADA, right? Like we all want to do something with our ADA one day. For me, that doesn't include giving anybody custody of my ADA, right? It's like we talked yesterday. I think everybody should, like acquire a little bit of USDM. Everybody should get $10 of USDM and try to find, some real world enterprise that can spend it on in Blue Pages. You know what I mean? That would be a good experiment, because hopefully if Blue Pages goes the way we hope it will, hopefully there are people on Blue Pages who have products that they sell as a side gig at farmers markets on the weekends. Hopefully there's somebody on there who's making, I give the example of my significant other coming home with a wooden spatula, from the farmer's market. Hopefully we get stuff like that on Blue Pages. And, that would also be giving up custody of, $10 worth of our ADA to get our hands on the USDM. So obviously we all plan on spending our ADA, doing something with it, getting some yield with it. But you have to recognize, if you're doing that, if you're giving up custody of any amount of ADA you actually care about, you have to ask yourself, what are the chances that this could be a lobster trap? Because nobody who responded to this, it is with great sadness post that we saw today, nobody seemed to respond to that with, oh yeah, I totally expected this when I gave you guys custody of my ADA. I totally expected for you to come back with, it is with great sadness. Nobody expected that. So this has been the case with many, many projects in every single crypto ecosystem, including Cardano. We've had our share of projects where, your money just disappears, and nobody who lost all their money expected their money to disappear. That can be you. So we got to be careful of the lobster traps. So Blue Mammal, speaking of, Blue Mammal says Satoshi Nakamoto, English translation roughly equals central intelligence. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff around the lore of Satoshi Nakamoto. There are, like Paul LaRue, his middle name was Salachi or something like that. There's something with Nick Szabo's name. They think that makes Satoshi like a conversion of Nick Szabo's name. I think it's like the NS, same initials or something. There's a lot of weird stuff with the lore of that name. There's even a book. There's a book that, was kind of like I forget if it's like actually historical fiction or if it's supposed to be like a historical account. But there's a character in one of those books that's been widely read by people in finance in the Western world called Satoshi Nakamoto. So there's a lot of different approaches to that name out there. There's a lot of different ways that can tie into the various candidates for Satoshi. So I hope we never quite unravel it. I always get a little afraid. Like early on, we heard rumors that the NSA knew who Satoshi was. They had to research it because they were afraid it was like, Russia or China. And then we heard rumors that McAfee knew who Satoshi was. And I always get a little afraid every time somebody says they know or somebody says that someone knows. I always get a little bit afraid because I think we're better off if we don't know who Satoshi was. Pucky Hawk thinks the name comes from anime. I think it's very possible. I think whoever Satoshi was, it's very possible this was a nerdy guy from the Western world. So anime watching could very much be a part of that. Cardano Universe says Cardano Universe will hold night long term. Okay. AI hacks, broken centralized Web 2, mass surveillance, and many more trash will create the perfect catalyst for mass crypto adoption, ZK, self-custody, inevitably. Yeah, I think there's a lot of technical reasons why, a greater Cardano ecosystem with Cardano and Midnight in it, with the ZK capabilities of Midnight and the decentralization of Cardano and all the self-custody that are going to be inherent in both ecosystems. I think there's a lot of technical reasons to assume that, Cardano plus Midnight is inevitable. But I think the liquidity part is also the liquidity part in the short term, there's inevitability behind crypto on a longer, sort of decade timeline, But I think even in the short term, there's an inevitability to the debasement and liquidity that's going to mean good things for us. At least I hope so. I hope so. So anyways, that's about all I've got for today. I think it's been another eventful week. Next week will be the end of next week will be a holiday in North America. So next week might be a slower week. But I think we're gonna have some interesting stuff over the next month. I think there's gonna be some interesting things happening. We're probably gonna get a lot of progress on the market structure bill in the Senate. Not next week, but in December, it sounds like, according to Brian Armstrong. So I think it's going to be an interesting next month. Now that the government's back open, I think we are going to see more of this liquidity trend. And I think that's really going to pick up in 2026. Not according to the Treasury, but they have an incentive not to be totally honest about that. Robert Scott says, I've been panicking about the Epstein files release, possibly link to the OG wallets dumping. Personal thoughts only. I sure hope not. I sure hope no important figures in crypto are going to show up in that file. It's possible, though. I haven't even thought about that, to be honest with you. I've mainly been thinking about political figures, how bad it would be for people's confidence in the government if certain politicians show up in there. But it could be bad for us if important crypto figures are in there, so hopefully like I don't even know who that would be. Hopefully like Vitamin is too young. Hopefully Vitamin wasn't hanging out with Epstein, something like that could be bad. I think he's too young for that. The good thing is crypto's pretty young. So we might get off the hook on that. Martin P says, nice channel. Thank you. What happened to Pi or Big Pay and USDC? I think I still haven't seen. I think what I think happens according to Charles. Charles claims that the price tag for the real problem is the price tag for a tier 1 stable. He claims the price tag for a tier 1 stable is just gigantic. Like USDC is like 100 million or something. So I think it's not a matter of having the right person go talk to him. I think nobody's willing to pay that price tag. And, they might be right. Martin P says, see you all at 74K BTC next Friday. I hope not. We will forget November, guys. Enjoy your vacation. Yep. I hope everybody, I'll be back next week. Before the holiday begins late in the week. We probably won't do one a week from today because nobody will be watching. Everybody will be doing holiday stuff in the US at least. So that it's probably not worth it to do a video at that time. So next Thursday we won't do it, but we'll do more videos next week. Robert Scott says Epstein was said to fund BTC development. Altcoin Daily ran the story. Oh yeah. I did see something about that. Hopefully no crypto figures are involved though. But anyways, I hope everybody had a great week. It's been a very eventful couple of weeks and couple of months in crypto. A lot of it in a bad direction. I hope the rest of 2025 is eventful in a positive direction, but I hope everybody had a good week. I hope you're looking forward to a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.